Welcome to AI World TV, your go-to destination for everything artificial intelligence. Discover the captivating landscape of AI, where advanced technology finds real-life application. Subscribe to AI World TV for webzine articles, reports, podcasts, videos, live events, and latest trends. Hear from top industry leaders and discover how AI is transforming industries and our daily lives.
Okay, so I want you to imagine a single, totally unmarked warehouse just sitting in an industrial park somewhere.
Yeah, nothing special on the outside.
Exactly. But inside, you've got these rows and rows of computers quietly humming away, running massive calculations. Here's the wild part. Imagine that this one single building requires the exact same amount of electricity to operate as the entire city of Seattle.
Which is just, that's a staggering level of scale.
It really is. And the crazy thing is, that isn't some dystopian sci-fi prediction for, the year 2050. That is the actual physical reality of the artificial intelligence industry right now in May of 2026.
Yeah, we are absolutely watching this transition from a digital phenomenon to a purely industrial one. And the friction of that transition, well, it's completely reshaping global supply chains.
So welcome to the deep dive. We have got a massive stack of reports today, earnings calls and analysis straight from the AI World Journal.
It's a hefty stack to get through.
Oh, yeah. But our mission today is basically to cut through all that relentless marketing hype and figure out what is actually happening on the ground. Because when you look at these sources, a very clear pattern emerges. 2026 is the year intelligence officially became infrastructure.
And, looking at a cross-section of news like this is really the only way to spot the hidden mechanics of the whole tech landscape.
Right.
Because if you only focus on the software benchmarks, you completely miss the physical bottlenecks that are paralyzing the hardware. And if you only look at the hardware, you miss the profound societal impacts rippling through the economy.
So we're going to follow this chain reaction basically from the bottom up today, starting with the brutal physical realities and these new power wars happening inside the data centers.
Right, the real heavy lifting.
Exactly. And from there, looking at how physics simply dictates that the hardware has to evolve, which is bringing these sci-fi concepts like light-speed photonics into reality.
Which is fascinating stuff.
It really is. And then, because compute power is at such a premium, human bottlenecks are being removed entirely, bringing us right into the era of autonomous AI agents running businesses in the background.
Taking over the software layer completely.
Yeah. And finally, we'll see how when a technology moves this fast and consumes this much power, it inevitably collides with the oldest institutions on Earth, like literally the Federal Reserve and the Vatican.
It's a profound shift. The conversation is no longer just happening in Silicon Valley. It's happening at the highest levels of global finance and religion.
Okay, let's unpack this physical reality first, because the very first thing that jumps out from the recent earnings reports, specifically from cloud operators like CoreWeave and Nebius, is that the GPU race is functionally over.
Yeah, that era is behind us.
Right. For years, the only question was just, who is buying the most processors? Who has the biggest stockpile of chips? But these reports are declaring that we are now officially in the power wars.
Because a bottleneck has completely moved. Securing the silicon is no longer the primary hurdle. The hurdle is just finding a place to plug it all in.
Exactly.
An AI supercluster isn't just a standard server room anymore. It is essentially an industrial furnace. NC Tech Talk has been reporting heavily on this.
Yeah, what do they say?
Well, the major concerns for AI infrastructure deployment have almost entirely shifted to power constraints, cooling capacity, and just this massive rapid rise in operating costs just to keep the lights on.
To put this into perspective for you, it's basically as if the entire tech industry ordered a fleet of $1,000 million high-performance sports cars.
Okay, I like this analogy.
Right. So they finally take delivery of these cars, put the keys in the ignition, and look around only to realize that nobody actually bothered to build enough paved roads or gas stations or specialized mechanics to service them. You have all these incredible engines, but you just don't have the logistics.
That is a highly accurate way to look at it. And, because AI is now this heavy physical industry, it is inherently vulnerable to physical world problems.
Real friction.
Exactly. The sources highlight that rising geopolitical tensions, specifically involving Iran right now, are actively stress testing these hardware supply chains.
And I really want to dig into the mechanics of that supply chain squeeze. Because when we talk about geopolitical tensions slowing down AI, we aren't really talking about the core AI chips themselves, right? The report specifically mentioned things like printed circuit boards, PCBs, semiconductors, power components, and optics.
Correct. I mean, the core processing unit gets all the glory, but a supercluster requires millions of supporting components.
Right.
Let's look at optics, for example. In a modern data center, data doesn't just travel over standard copper Ethernet cables anymore. The bandwidth demands are just way too high.
The copper just can't handle it.
It can't. So it travels via optical transceivers. These convert electrical signals into light for short, incredibly fast hops between the servers. And if a shipping lane disruption or, say, a manufacturing delay in the Middle East or Asia halts the delivery of these seemingly basic power components and optics, you literally cannot finish the data center.
Wow.
Yeah, $1 billion facility can just sit idle for months because it's missing a $10 routing component.
That is wild. So we have the situation where the supply chain is incredibly fragile, and even when the parts do arrive, the machines are drawing so much power that they are physically melting down traditional cooling systems.
They are backed into a corner for sure.
Which brings us to how they are basically trying to engineer their way out of this. The AI World Journal has this massive feature piece on a concept called photonics. And the headline is literally, Why Photonics is Becoming Critical to the Future of AI Infrastructure.
It is the next necessary evolution in hardware design.
But wait, I have to challenge this a bit.
Yeah.
Because here's where it gets really interesting. Every 6 months, the tech industry invents a new buzzword to keep venture capitalists excited.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Like spatial computing, the metaverse, you name it. So is photonics just the tech world's latest shiny object to keep the hype cycle moving? Or is this like a strict physics necessity because traditional chips are literally melting?
It is a hard, completely unavoidable physics necessity. The fundamental issue here is the limitation of the electron itself.
Okay, break that down for us.
So traditional computing works by pushing electrical currents, electrons, through copper wires and silicon pathways. But when you push massive, unprecedented amounts of electricity through physical material, you generate immense friction.
And friction means heat.
Exactly. Friction generates heat. That is the root cause of the power crisis right there. Data centers are spending absolute fortunes not just on electricity to run the chips, but on these vast liquid cooling systems just to stop the chips from physically combusting.
So how does photonics actually solve that friction problem?
By replacing the electron with the photon. Instead of pushing an electrical current through a wire, photonics uses lasers to transmit data as particles of light through optical pathways directly at the chip level.
So pushing electrons is like trying to force 1 million people through a narrow, unventilated hallway.
Yes.
The friction and the heat are just unbearable. But photonics is like putting those same 1 million people on a totally frictionless bullet train in a complete vacuum.
Precisely. Light travels vastly faster, and it can carry exponentially more data by utilizing different wavelengths simultaneously. And most importantly, it generates almost zero heat.
Wow.
So moving to light-based computing isn't some marketing stunt. It is quite literally the only viable mechanism to bypass the thermal limits of silicon.
That makes so much sense. And while the industry is looking at light to solve the heat problem, they are also heavily optimizing traditional silicon to be like hyper efficient. The reports mention AWS pushing their custom silicon, which they call Graviton, higher up into their Redshift analytics stack.
Which is a perfect example of specialized engineering. I mean, Redshift is a massive data warehousing product. Historically, you might run those massive databases on general-purpose processors.
Like a big general engine.
Right, the equivalent of a massive gas-guzzling V8 engine. AWS designing custom Graviton chips for this specific task is basically like swapping that V8 out for a highly tuned, specialized motor that does the exact same heavy lifting but sips a fraction of the power. It's all about efficiency per watt now.
But perhaps the most radical shift in hardware isn't just how it's built, but where it's actually going. There's a fascinating report in here about a company called Blaze partnering with Winmate to deploy something they are calling Rugged Edge AI.
Yes, this is a big shift.
And they are specifically targeting defense and critical infrastructure.
What's fascinating here is we are watching AI step out of the pristine, climate-controlled server room and directly into the harsh physical world. Edge computing basically means processing the data right where it is collected, at the edge of the network, rather than transmitting it thousands of miles back to some centralized cloud.
Because if you are, say, operating a military Humvee or an offshore oil rig or an automated factory floor, you don't have the luxury of latency. You can't wait for a signal to bounce to a server in Virginia and back.
You need the artificial intelligence embedded locally, making instantaneous decisions. But a factory floor or a combat zone is dusty, it vibrates violently, and it experiences extreme temperature swings.
Right. Traditional servers would die in minutes out there.
Exactly. So the hardware itself has to be fundamentally re-engineered, ruggedized to survive.
It's so fascinating to see how the financial markets are interpreting all this infrastructure build-out, too. Looking at the stock ticker data from the journal, an unnamed AI chipmaker just soared 68% in its IPO.
A massive jump.
Huge! And analysts are actively debating if AMD is a top stock to buy right now. Plus, foundational players like Apple and Microsoft are up. But, and this is the crazy part, the actual stock ticker symbol AI is down 4.21%.
That divergence right there is the ultimate indicator of market maturity. The initial wave of blind speculation is totally over.
The hype bubble popped.
It did. Investors are no longer just throwing capital at anything with an AI label slapped on it. They're specifically rewarding the companies laying the concrete. You know, the chip designers, the cloud hyperscalers, the rugged hardware manufacturers.
And basically the picks and shovels of the modern gold rush.
Precisely.
Which creates a perfect transition to our next big question here. If we are spending billions of dollars to lay fiber optics, build rugged edge computers, and solve this massive power crisis, what exactly is running on these highly optimized networks?
Right. What's it all for?
Yeah. I mean, if compute is so expensive, how are companies actually utilizing it?
They are utilizing it to build autonomy. We are shifting from tools that require constant human input to systems that operate entirely on their own.
Right. The sources are calling 2026 the era of the autonomous agent. Snowflake just released their predictions, explicitly naming this the year of agents and ecosystems. And we even have a feature titled From Prompt to Profit, AI agents run entire businesses while you sleep.
The distinction between a chatbot and an agent is just really critical to wrap our heads around here. A chatbot is reactive. It sits idle until
You are listening to the AI World Podcast, your trusted source for the latest innovations, insights, and trends in artificial intelligence, blockchain, fintech, and decentralized technologies. Each episode features expert interviews, engaging discussions, and in-depth analysis of how AI transforms industries worldwide. Stay ahead of the curve with the latest articles and exclusive reports from the AI World Journal, covering everything from emerging technologies to industry breakthroughs. For more news, global events, and access to AI World Society circle gatherings, visit us at aiworld.tv. Don't forget to subscribe to stay informed, stay connected, and be part of the AI revolution with AI World Lounge. Thank you for listening.
you type a specific prompt, it gives you an answer, and then it goes right back to sleep.
Okay.
An agent, on the other hand, is proactive and goal-oriented.
So what does this all mean in practice? Like, instead of asking a chatbot to write an email draft for you, you give an agent a broad objective, like monitor our inventory, and if supplies drop below 10%, negotiate with our 3 main vendors, select the lowest price, draft the purchase order, and route it to accounting.
Exactly. And the agent will execute that entire multi-step workflow. It will interact with different software ecosystems, make localized decisions entirely without any human intervention.
But here is where the narrative in the sources kind of fractures, and I find this incredibly revealing.
Oh, the pushback.
Yeah. On one hand, we have these glowing reports of agents flawlessly running logistics in the background. But on the other hand, the sources highlight some spectacular, highly public failures when AI tries to step outside of that neat logistics box.
Oh, definitely.
Like Gizmodo recently ran an experiment where they put large language models in charge of entire radio stations. The headline is literally, "We put AI in charge of a radio station. You'll never guess how it went."
Spoiler, not well.
Not well at all. And then there's Carl Nolt, a legendary columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle. He literally asked an AI to write a column in his voice. His reaction was visceral. He heavily regretted it.
It reveals the hard boundary between logical pattern matching and genuine human cultural context.
But why the massive disconnect? I mean, if an agent can negotiate a complex supply chain contract flawlessly, why does it make such a bizarre, off-putting radio DJ? Why did Carl Nolt hate reading his AI clone so much? Is it just that AI is brilliant at math but entirely lacks a soul?
It lacks lived experience. An AI agent operates within a very closed ecosystem of rules. Balancing a ledger or routing an email, that's a strict logic puzzle with a verifiable right answer. But hosting a radio show or writing a personal newspaper column, that relies on human idiosyncrasy. It relies on shared cultural touchstones, comedic timing, authentic emotion.
Things you can't just code.
Exactly. When an LLM tries to replicate Carl Nolly, it doesn't possess his memories or his unique worldview. It is simply calculating the statistical probability of the next word he might use.
So it's an imitation of human cadence, but it's completely hollow inside.
Exactly. It enters the uncanny valley. It's close enough to human to be recognizable, but just artificial enough to be deeply, deeply unsettling to the listener or the reader.
Which brings us to arguably the most pressing anxiety for anyone listening to this deep dive right now, which is the future of human labor.
The big question.
Right. If agents are taking over the logic puzzles and the logistics, what happens to the knowledge workers? There is an opinion piece from the Washington Post in our stack that makes a highly counterintuitive argument here. The headline reads, "AI won't replace lawyers, it will create more of them."
Which sounds completely backwards.
On the surface, that makes absolutely no sense. If an AI agent can ingest and analyze 10,000 pages of case law in 2 seconds, why would society need more human lawyers?
To understand that paradox, we really have to look at the economic mechanism known as induced demand.
Okay, walk us through how induced demand actually works in practice.
So, induced demand occurs when a technological breakthrough drastically lowers the cost and the time required to provide a specific service or product. Historically, when a resource becomes incredibly cheap and accessible, human consumption of that resource doesn't just stay flat, it explodes.
Okay, that makes sense.
Let's apply this to the legal sector. Currently, legal services are prohibitively expensive for a lot of people. A small business owner might simply ignore a minor breach of contract because hiring a lawyer to draft a customized demand letter would cost them $500 an hour.
Right, the financial barrier to entry is so high that most people just absorb the loss and really hope they don't get sued.
But imagine a scenario where an AI agent can perform the initial case discovery, draft a customized, legally sound contract, or generate a cease and desist letter for a few cents in a matter of seconds. The financial barrier to legal action drops to zero.
Oh, wow, I see. If it costs virtually nothing to generate the paperwork, society is going to be absolutely flooded with legal action.
Exactly. The volume of contracts drafted, disputes initiated, and legal reviews requested will skyrocket exponentially. And while the AI agent can generate the raw documents, it cannot negotiate the nuances of a settlement in a boardroom.
Right.
It cannot read the emotional temperature of a jury. It cannot provide high-level strategic counsel to a CEO.
So the technology doesn't eliminate the industry. It scales the industry so massively that human workers are pushed out of the rote data processing roles and pushed up into the strategic oversight role.
Exactly.
The sheer volume of AI-generated legal friction actually requires more human lawyers to manage the fallout.
Precisely. The entire baseline of productivity shifts.
Which perfectly sets up our final thematic leap today. We have moved from the physical constraints of copper and cooling liquid to the speed of photonics to autonomous agents reshaping the economics of human labor.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. And when a technology alters global infrastructure and human productivity, this fundamentally, it forces the world's most powerful traditional institutions to react.
It graduates from being just a technology story to being a foundational pillar of human society.
Exactly. And according to a report from Yahoo Finance, there is currently a mammoth disagreement brewing within the Federal Reserve over artificial intelligence. And they are warning it could reshape monetary policy.
To understand why the Fed is deeply concerned, we have to look at their core mechanics. The Federal Reserve operates on a dual mandate, right? Keep inflation in check and maximize employment. And their primary lever for controlling this is adjusting interest rates.
So how does AI throw a wrench into that machinery?
Well, economic models rely on predictable human productivity. But if autonomous AI agents are suddenly running massive segments of the economy, drastically increasing corporate output without requiring those companies to hire thousands of new entry-level human workers, the traditional models just break down.
Everything gets thrown off.
Exactly. If hyper-efficient AI supply chains cause the cost of consumer goods to plummet, creating deflationary pressure, should the Fed lower interest rates? Or conversely, because tech giants are borrowing hundreds of billions of dollars to build these massive power-hungry data centers, should the Fed keep interest rates high to cool down the capital expenditure?
Wow.
The disagreement isn't really about the technology itself. It's a fundamental debate over whether AI represents a temporary boom or a permanent structural alteration to how macroeconomic physics actually work.
And we should be very clear here for you listening. We aren't taking a stance on what the site should or shouldn't do with monetary policy.
Yeah.
We are simply reporting that this technology is gridlocking their traditional models.
Absolutely. We are strictly looking at the institutional reaction.
Right. And speaking of institutional reactions, while the Federal Reserve is gridlocked over the mathematics of productivity, the Vatican is stepping in to address the philosophical fallout.
Yes, this is a major development.
The sources confirm that Pope Leo XIV is releasing a highly anticipated encyclical entirely focused on artificial intelligence.
And for context here, an encyclical is a major formal document. It is one of the highest levels of teaching a pope can issue to the global church.
And beyond just the document, Pope Leo has officially approved the creation of an interdicasterial commission on artificial intelligence to unite and direct the Church's global response.
It's a massive mobilization.
It is. And simultaneously, we have pieces in The Guardian featuring prominent evolutionary biologists like Richard Dawkins exploring the deep, thorny questions of AI consciousness.
And again, as we analyze this, it is crucial that we remain entirely impartial regarding religious doctrine or evolutionary biology.
Exactly.
What is undeniably fascinating, however, is just the sheer scale and gravity of the disruption.
I mean, it raises an important question. Why do you think institutions that traditionally measure time in centuries are reacting so aggressively to a technology that basically updates every 6 months?
Because the questions AI forces us to ask are no longer strictly technical. When a system can mimic human creativity, negotiate contracts, and autonomously navigate the world, it encroaches on the domains of human dignity, the theology of labor, and the very definition of consciousness itself.
That heavy.
It is. Richard Dawkins and the Vatican may approach the concept of a soul or consciousness from entirely different foundational worldviews, but they are both actively trying to identify the threshold where advanced pattern matching ends and genuine sentience begins. The Church is basically forced to articulate what separates an infinitely complex autonomous agent from a human being.
Which circles right back to Carl Nolte, looking at his AI-generated newspaper column and feeling that deep sense of dread.
Yes.
We're collectively trying to draw a hard circle around what is uniquely irreducibly human while simultaneously building machines that are increasingly designed to blur that exact line.
And we are doing it while consuming an unprecedented percentage of the Earth's physical resources.
Which brings us to the end of our journey today. We have covered incredible ground.
We really have.
We started with the gritty physical reality of the power wars, right? How broken supply chains for simple optics and PCBs are stalling billion-dollar data centers. We explored the physics of heat and why light-speed photonics and rugged-edge computing are these necessary evolutions.
Moving from the hardware straight into the software.
Exactly. We unpacked the mechanics of autonomous agents and how induced demand might actually create jobs rather than destroy them. And finally, we saw how the massive scale of this disruption has gridlocked the Federal Reserve's economic models and prompted a historic response from the Vatican.
It is a vast interconnected ecosystem, and every single piece relies on the others.
So for you listening, whether you are a developer writing code, a lawyer navigating this new induced demand, or simply someone trying to make sense of where the world is heading, this is the ultimate takeaway.
The big picture.
Yeah. AI is no longer a weightless, fluffy cloud, and it is no longer just a shiny app on your phone. It is the unseen physical infrastructure we are all now operating within. It is inextricably tied to the power grid, the global supply chain, and the economic policies that dictate our daily lives.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. We began this deep dive by discussing how the AI industry is physically running out of electricity, how the data centers are heavy, hot, and starving for megawatts.
Right.
We ended by discussing millions of highly capable, goal-oriented AI agents running businesses and making autonomous decisions while we sleep. What happens to the global power grid when millions of autonomous agents realize they require more compute power to achieve their assigned goals, and they begin actively, silently competing with each other for the very physical energy resources they need to survive?
Wow. A silent light-speed bidding war for electricity happening entirely in the background of our lives. It just goes to show the cloud was never really floating above us at all. It was always anchored right here in the ground, heavy, concrete, and incredibly hungry for power. Thank you for joining us for this conversation today. Keep questioning the world around you, keep looking past the hype, and we will see you on the next deep dive.
The future of artificial intelligence is unfolding, and it's happening at AI World Week, the flagship global event for innovation, collaboration, and transformation. This flagship global AI event is designed to connect visionary leaders, trailblazing entrepreneurs, and influential thinkers to explore the endless possibilities of AI. Experience groundbreaking technology that redefines industries and inspires progress. Join thought-provoking discussions on ethical AI, digital equity, and the transformative role of technology in our world. Build meaningful connections that catalyze innovation and drive impact. AI World Week is powered by AI World Society, a global movement dedicated to advancing AI responsibly and ensuring it serves humanity. Together, we're shaping a smarter, more inclusive, and equitable future. Continue your journey beyond the event with the AI World Journal, offering expert insights, in-depth analysis, and the latest trends shaping the AI landscape. This is your opportunity to lead, to innovate, and to transform the world with AI. AI World Week. We invite you to join us and embrace the AI revolution.